Hi, can we start?
Yes, you can start. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I am TF Cheng. I am the head of HashKey Group in Singapore. HashKey Group is a international digital asset group with offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Tokyo. It's an institutional grade digital asset. I'm the moderator of the panel for today, and the topic is on CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and payment systems in general. So I have with me today three very distinguished panelists who are all highly accomplished entrepreneurs and recognized experts in payment space, right? Whether it's stable coins or CBDC projects. So I have Do from Terra, Beam from Lightnet, and Charles from Consensus. So in the following about 30 minutes or so, we'll be tapping on their thinking, on their brains, and on their experience in this very exciting blockchain-enabled payment space that is really getting disrupted, right, as we speak. And we'll discuss the topic of CBDCs and payments in general. So to kick it off, if I can get each of the panelists to give a brief introduction of yourself and the work that you do specifically on payments, or particularly on payments. If we can start with Do, and then me, and then Charles.
Hey guys, my name is Do. I'm a founder and CEO at Paragon Labs, which is sort of the company that operates and manages some of the core technologies around the blockchain. With respect to payments, we are building out several different payment operations currently in Korea and Mongolia that is some of the fastest growing fintech shops in each of those countries, where in Korea our payment solutions are being used by 2.2 million people and doing billions of dollars in transaction volume annually. And then in Mongolia, a younger operation but still conservative on the payment side. So I'm excited to share with everyone.
Hello, my name is Beam. I'm the co-founder of Lightnet. Lightnet is the next generation settlement network. We are backed by a number of Asian conglomerates that own different 7-Eleven across Asia Pacific. We start by trying to use blockchain to connect to different cash-out network. And now we're moving toward also creating a blockchain network that can connect different kind of blockchain and connect to not only cash-out network, but also digital bank, wallet, even the bank itself. The goal here is to have a fully interoperable network that can allow for the universal payment system and allow for all kind of money transfer, operator, trusted partner to settle anywhere in real time, 24/7. So this is Lightnet.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Bossu. I'm the director of Consensus here in Hong Kong, and I lead business development for Consensus here in Asia Pacific. It's a great honor to be part of the Wanxiang Blockchain Week. I'm a big fan of the Wanxiang family and work for many years. So thank you very much for having me today. When it comes to Consensus, we've been involved with CBDCs for a number of years. Back in 2018, we worked with the Central Bank of South Africa. We also engaged with the MAS in Singapore in the context of Project Habit. And lately, we've been awarded a CBDC project with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. So we are really at the heart of CBDC We have a dedicated team at Consensus helping central banks and banks to build the infrastructure and identify the right use cases and build the infrastructure around them. So really looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that brief intro. So if we can maybe get each of you start for the preserve of governments, right? And for us to have the term CBDC, digital bank, digital currencies. Sometimes, it makes me wonder, when was the last time, right, the currency was not a central bank currency? So the fact that we are discussing this, it's quite fascinating. That of course we've seen with the advent of Bitcoin and since then, right, all these alternative payment systems, or you can call private payment systems that have evolved. So if I can go back to Joe and then Dean, because you guys are the disruptors, so to speak, right, the innovators. Can I ask you to share with the audience, right, what was the thinking, what was the motivation or the inspiration behind the launch of your project? Right? What was the problem that you were really trying to solve?
Yeah, so to sort of kick off the discussion here, I think we're at an interesting time where a lot of governments are looking to engage with digital assets in some form, but at the same time are imposing more and more restrictions in the private sector to be able to, for retail to be doing interesting things with their banking. So, for example, while we have a number of countries starting to experiment with and issue CBDCs, we also have regulations around FinCEN and guidelines around FATF tightening as well, right? So, from a more, shall we say, on the grounds perspective, for example, in Korea, it's no longer possible. So when you first open a bank account, your withdrawal limit is set to about $880. And then you need to submit a number of variable paperwork to be able to lift that to something that's actually usable. So, and then there's also limitations on the number of accounts that you can open, the paperwork that's required. So, in some sense, I think one of the things that a private sector-led stablecoin or clearinghouse or decentralized network can do is that it is able to bring banking solutions to retail while sort of ameliorating some of those user experience requirements or restrictions. So for us in payments, so like user convenience is definitely one thing. But secondly, I think using crypto to accept payments and settle to merchants can result in significant improvements in commercial terms. So for example, like in payments, like most of that actually aggregates on the B2B layer in terms of how payments are perceived by users. There's no explicit fee, like no payment company forces the user to pay the fee. While at the same time, all of those costs are sort of propagated to the merchants that has to pay the fees to use the service. One of the major benefits is that you are able to bypass those clearing networks. So these are called value-add networks that settle the merchants. But by settling directly in terms of your own network, your own infrastructure, your own stablecoin, you're able to cut away those fees so that you can own the entire payment layer stack to stack without having to have margins paid out to your partners. Another major benefit of this is that you can settle very quickly. So the average settlement time in Korea for digital payments is around 7 days. In Japan, it's a little bit longer. In Southeast Asia, it can go up to 2 weeks. So one of the major benefits of settling in crypto is that it's instantaneous, right? So like even Bitcoin is super fast. For Terra, for instance, we settle every 6 seconds. So like a major benefit of using our network is that if you, let's say, are a platform that works with a lot of SMBs, freelancers, small businesses, you're able to process transactions for that very, very quickly, therefore eliminating a lot of working capital concerns that smaller pockets might have. Yeah.
Hello. So I think our main motivation is we feel that blockchain technology is a real technology that will spark I would say the next industrial revolution for the financial infrastructure. Currently, if I have to compare SWIFT to the industry revolution, SWIFT is like a railroad where there are many stations. So right now, we need to move money even between banks. We need to go through basically 4 to 8 banks just to settle money. And as Bill mentioned, it takes quite a while. While blockchain technology is like a technology that allows you to move things like a Ferrari or like a plane. So right now we enter into a very interesting junction where with the blockchain technology you can cut through the middleman and you can basically do a direct transfer without even the need to convert it to US dollar and convert it back to another currency. The other thing that's interesting is that on the exchange rate, currently when we talk a lot about the bank rate, the spot rate, the cash rate, but actually the cheapest rate is the digital rate because there's actually no actual settlement needed sometimes when we do exchange. So right now our biggest motivation is that how do we able to create a digital fiat exchange where everything is at digital rate, a digital fiat rate where the cost is the most competitive. While you're using blockchain technology to not move money like you would from one station to the station, like train station, it actually can allow you from a bar to go like a private jet to another thing that we want in real time. And then also allow an option for the user to convert a digital fiat into that settlement, which is either through cash, through the bank network, or through the wallet. So for us, our main driver to create Lightning Network is to create the speed and also have the lowest cost and drive the interoperability. Because what we see is stablecoin actually offer the alternative of the decentralized account or alternative bank account. So when you combine the concept that is very powerful stablecoin that allows the global settlement, then you can move it into different realm. The whole concept under one universal credit become very powerful. So that is what we strive for. So I think we're entering into a very interesting era where the financial infrastructure can be fast, cheap, and also allow full connectivity between industries.
Thanks a lot, Vivi and Bill, for that sharing. And Charles, not to put you in a spot, but because I know Consensus has worked very closely with many central banks, and a lot of them are taking notice, right, that this issue of inefficiencies in the old world, should I say, the traditional payment infrastructure, in particular cross-border payment infrastructure, is quite well known, right? And we have been seeing it. Almost every day I see a new headline saying a particular central bank is now studying and exploring a CBDC, right? And it may not be a direct response, but it's certainly a response, I think, to what is obviously disruptions, transformation happening in the payment space, right? Just to give a few examples, right? In Hong Kong, there's the Line Rock. In Singapore, there's Ubin. There is Intenon, if I state correctly. In Thailand, Bank of Thailand, there's Jasper, Bank of Canada, Stella, ECB, Bank of Japan, and so on and so forth. There's so many examples. So Charles, if I could ask you to maybe put on the hat for a moment on the side of the central banks, right, and in the work of Consensus, what would you say is the response? Right? Are they seeing the development of these private alternative payment systems to be a challenge to the existing central bank regime in that sense? And is that what is driving their interest in exploring CBDCs?
Indeed, Jeff, a great question here. I think today we estimate about 80% of the central banks are doing works on CBDCs. Some of them are starting their journey, some others are really advanced, like the Central Bank of China, PBOC. And I guess what was really some kind of wake-up call in all this research project was Libra. Libra was like, oh my God, I need to do something. There is this big consortium of companies with billions of customers on their platform, which are looking at launching their digital currency, and this can challenge each national currency. We've seen a lot of activity. So all the research we've seen in central banks for some time kind of accelerated to try to go closer to production. And you see, when you look at CBDCs today at central banks, there is two types of work. So central banks will work either on what we call wholesale CBDCs, so they are essentially B2B CBDCs between the central bank and the commercial bank, and looking at how the wholesale money moves between central banks and banks. So that's the wholesale use case. And then there is the more retail CBDC use case, where we look together with central banks and how we enable central banks and the digital currency to go through all the network from the bank to payment providers down to the wallet of end users. So these are the two topics which really focus and get all the attention of central banks. What we feel right now also is, depending on which part of the world you are interacting with this CBDCs project, some of them are still evaluating the technology. They want to understand which blockchain, which type of architecture will be the most meaningful for their CBDC in the future. And there is another group of central banks which are, I think, a very different approach. They're really looking for the use case. If you create only faster money, this will not be enough to make it a success. What you want to realize also is central banks, if they build something, they want this to have a good market fit. In a way, they have a similar challenge as a startup. If you create a CBDC, but the CBDC is only faster, there will be many players in the ecosystem which will say, oh, maybe I'm happy with the existing system. So a lot of central banks are spending a lot of time and attention to try to look at the technology and identify use cases which will get an immediate market fit and immediate traction. Otherwise, they will have to manage a different type of currencies within their economies, the old paper money, the digital money on wallets, the bank money, the M0, 1, 2 money, and then CBDCs, which will be extremely complex. So I think one of the big challenges for central banks right now is identifying the use case where blockchain-based currencies bring something which is very unique to guarantee the adoption from the banks. And the concept which are the most interesting is not so much the speed. Speed is a really good thing, but it's not, I don't think it's a killer app. The killer app will be more around, in our views, around programmable money, around money which embed compliance rules and KYC requirements so that it can move within the ecosystem and it can help banks and startups and payment processors not only to go faster but to have their operations much more efficient because they get this kind of smarter money into their lives. So that's really where we see a lot of work. The retail CBDCs are obviously clearly led by China. I think the PBOC has been working really hard for a long time. Many people don't realize CBDCs in China is a conversation which started 6 years ago. This is why, actually in China people don't call CBDCs, they call it DCP. You know why? Because DCP existed before CBDC. So DCP stands for Digital Currency and Electronic Payment, DCP. And that's a concept which is 6 years old for the PBOC. So it really shows how much work and time the PBOC has spent on this concept. And when you look at this as a DCP in China, it's really a very different approach from CBDCs we've seen in other parts of the world. It's really looking at replacing M0 money, going for the retail use case first. When you look at some other jurisdictions, people will be usually focusing first on wholesale CBDCs and maybe giving themselves some time as a central banks to look at retail CBDC later. And that's where there is a space for privately issued stablecoins, which can, for example, like Mistera money or LikeNet, can really bring value very quickly and possibly make for themselves some space in this very hot market of CBDC / stablecoins.
Thanks, Charles, very much for that great overview. So the DCEP is the first CBDC. Okay, it's a good way to practice your speech. Now, on that point, maybe I go back to the disruptors, right? For Do and Be. Okay, I'm not going to make this into a kind of for and against per se, because it may not be necessarily a binary kind of relationship. But how would you guys see the very obvious increase in interest by central banks, by government, so to enter the digital currency space, right? In a sense, to really regain the control or the rule-setting authority that central banks have always had over currencies and payment systems. Do you see that as a threat to your business model, as to your project, or in fact is it a complement and it may actually help accelerate adoption? If I can go back to Bill.
Yeah, so I think the really interesting thing about CBDCs isn't the fact that there are CBDCs out there, but the fact that 80% of all central banks are experimenting with it in some form. So basically what that means is that, it's essentially like if you look at the global monetary system, it's essentially like its own chain in some sense, in the sense that it's basically a network of different currencies being swapped, traded, transferred, and so on and so forth, right? So in a world where every single government has its own variant of CBDC, essentially all of these currencies are competing against each other in some sense. And in this case, the network is only as restricted, is as free as its most liberal link. So, for example, we're in a situation where, let's say, the China CBDC is able to be acquired in trust in centralized exchanges and used as DeFi primitives and things like that. And in that case, all of the different CBDCs will have to lower their, let's say, KYC requirements, openness requirements, trustless requirements in order to keep up, because it's basically like competing out. And then I think more than the features of individual CBDCs, like if you have a multiple set of different CBDCs that are competing for more openness, for more freedom, for more interoperability, that's going to lead to financial systems being more open and more accessible overall. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits that we can take away from this space. So ultimately, like the CBDC doesn't come alone, right? It brings together a large set of ecosystems like on-ramp, clarifications of regulation, different players that are willing to build infrastructure around it. So if you are starting to build systems that are, that is converging to openness, if you will, then in that case, that's something that's very, very bullish and very good for the entire digital assets industry.
Agree with Bill. I think CBDC is really complementary to what we're building. So again, back to the analogy of the transportation. So if LineNet is like a private airline, CBDC is like an airport, like basically a train station that help us reach the last mile easier. I feel that they all connect and actually complement with each other. I think one benefit of CBDC is that it's actually also getting backed by the central bank government in around for the market enforcement. It's actually also allowing for the consolidation or for the aggregation of the last mile network, let's say China and Thailand, that if the private technology connected correctly, it could really create a very complementary use case that can really accelerate the adoption. So we feel that with things like CBDC and also with many large financial institutions, they're also trying to get into the blockchain. If all parties can be connected in the right way, it would basically make in the next few years a very big financial evolution where blockchain can become a real mainstream.
Maybe one thing, TF, if I can complement the input from Do and Beam. The way I look at things is we are sometimes in our own cocoon of blockchain practitioners. And what I notice when I talk to people which are not in blockchain, even though our technology is trustless, we all build blockchain solutions which are trustless, the end user is always looking for some kind of trust anchor. They want to trust someone. People want to trust you, they don't want to trust me. Or they want, some of us are happy to trust the technology, but the mass market want to trust someone. And even though it's a trustless technology, there is always a need for trust somewhere. And the CBDCs are bringing this kind of trust on an asset which will be moving in different type of pipes. Some of them will be blockchain, non-blockchain, or hybrid systems. But let's not forget that in finance, it's a trust business. And when you can put trust on one asset, it becomes much easier to get really mass adoption, and this will benefit to everyone. So I think it's really growing the cake and benefiting for all of technology.
That's a great point from everyone. In fact, on that, I think the most obvious advantage or difference that a central bank would have, right, when they issue a currency is that trust element, right? It's backed by a sovereign trust, right, which is arguably the highest level of trust. And also the fact that, of course, they are the regulator, and in terms of mass adoption, I mean, we can kind of just declare that this is the only legal tender or something along those lines. Now, I'm interested to hear for a Go and Beam, because for private payment systems, you know, how do you get around this question of gaining trust, right, from the market and to get mass adoption? Because that is something that you do not enjoy as a non-central bank, right? And you guys could share that.
Yeah, I think perhaps it would be more illustrative to show an example. So, for example, Terra and Lightnet actually recently entered into a partnership. And basically, I think what resonated with our team is Lightnet's vision of wanting to become a connective tissue. And what's really interesting is that if you look at a lot of the fintech and payment ecosystems in the world, they're all sort of isolated, right? And which is pretty unique for such a industry where technology is deeply penetrated. So if you look at rideshare, for instance, like all the rideshare companies are in trouble. Right? You can take a Lyft app and go to China, and then hail a Didi. You can take Kakao Taxi in Korea or Japan, and then hail a Japan Taxi, and so on and so forth. But for payments, everything is separated. Like you can't use any of the payment apps to shop at any of the merchants, any of the other merchants. So like one of the really interesting angles here is that if we had sort of like a global clearing house, if you will, which taps into blockchain technology such that value in one country could efficiently be swapped and settled to clear another, you can create experiences where all the fintech applications and DeFi apps and so on and so forth are interoperable. So for example, like you can imagine a situation where users of our Chai app in Korea could travel to Thailand and shop at 7-Eleven stores. And then vice versa, users of payment apps in Thailand can come to Korea and then shop at all the locations where Chai is currently accepted and used. So that's really hard to do using fiat, because especially given like foreign exchange and settlements is something that's highly efficient. So I think that's one of the angles where private solutions would have an immediate edge over CBDCs, because whereas central banks have pretty good grasp of merchant acquisition and distribution within the boundaries of a sovereign state, it's very hard to extend that to a more international setting where agility and the ability to strike partnerships quickly is something that's valuable.
Yeah. Well, just to build up on the whole point, right? I think on the trust part, right, where Lightnet is backed by the bank, leading conglomerate from different places in Asia, right? So when we're building the use case, we're building from our shareholder own use case, like 7-Eleven, it will be bank, like different shareholder within Lightnet itself. And then we using that, say where the Visa card start, right? Visa card start by a number of banks forming like a federation to start a Visa network. So what we did is, once we have this network of federated trusted partner, we then able to connect with digital bank. we're able to connect to different big money transfer operator, different payment network. We actually can also connect to a very big credit card network very soon as well. So once you have a trusted partner in different walk of life, connecting to the Lightning network, where we also have a compliance layer to ensure that all the partners that are settled are a licensed partner. They're all like fulfilled under the regulatory framework. And in one of these things, we also have an oracle that links to different trusted partners, whether it's their custodian bank, whether it's their escrow to verify the actual fiat backing one-to-one. And we also guarantee that everything that are exchanged in our digital fiat exchange network, it guarantees settlement to the real world. So once you start having another partner coming in, you start having transactions with the real partner, they also transact with stablecoin project like Terra. They create a trust, they create a confidence, it also creates a scalability in the project. Also, one of the reasons that people may ask why we start getting more and more financial institutions coming to our network, the easy answer is because of the cost. Because currently in one bank, when they transfer money for the customer to another bank, they need to share money back to the US, like JP Morgan. JP Morgan will likely collect like 1/3 or half of their fee. So by using Lightning Network, they only need to share that fee with the counterparty. They don't need to share the fee with another full bank. Also, our network allows the bank not only to talk to the bank, but the bank can talk to Settlement Straight, can talk to stablecoin project like Terra Straight. So that really allowing for a more seamless, a more cost-effective way to move money. And I think by combining both the trust and the economic interest, we can probably really like accelerate the mass adoption of the blockchain technology and value transfer.
Thanks a lot, guys, on that. Charles, I wonder if you might want to weigh in on this. In the work that Consensus does with different central banks, do you see a difference, perhaps, between countries where maybe the existing payment system or infrastructure is already relatively efficient or highly efficient, if you will, relative to other central banks where maybe there is a more obvious gap in terms of the probability or possibility of improvement, and in the way we think about the need for or the room that they're happy to allow for alternative payment systems to take place, and how they think about the role of CBDCs and whether they coexist with alternative systems or not. You're on mute, Charles.
I think that's a great question, TF. Thank you for this one. Indeed, I think we are very lucky to be in Asia right now and working on new generation of money. Most of our payment systems in Asia are fairly modern, they are new, they are fairly efficient. So in a way, it's a little bit more of a challenge. You have to show really your best game. If you are launching a new type of money, or if you are launching a new CBDC offer to your ecosystem, because the systems around us are fairly advanced, to be honest, against Europe or US systems. So in a way, this is a little bit more challenging, but it really pushes us to get into the more long-term benefits of the technology and focusing again on the use cases. And if I look at some of the engagement we have here in the region in Asia Pacific, one of the public one is with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, where we are working on project in Danang Lion Rock Phase 2. So this is involving the Hong Kong Monetary Authority as well as the Bank of Thailand, and we are kind of pushing to the next level this initial program of cross-border use of CBDCs, looking at how you can create a corridor network where CBDCs from Thailand and Hong Kong will come, and being able to enable different use cases. So of course we can think of swapping the currencies, we can think of many more use cases which we are exploring right now with the Bank of Thailand and Monetary Authority. But it's interesting to see that just the swapping of exchange is meaningful if it can either enable the existing banks or new players, and not only doing things a little bit faster. So what we see is a much deep dive into the use cases looking at building with the existing payment systems, which are usually fairly okay, to be honest, and trying to find a good market fit for these CBDCs. And the concept of programmability, I think it's something which really creates an unfair advantage for CBDCs, thinking how you can embed into your tokens compliance, if you can embed directions. For example, if you want to have a payment dedicated to be spent only in one country or spent only in one type of product, for example, it's very meaningful. And in this part of the world where everything is more or less cross-border, being able to have currency which are programmable and make cross-border payment and transaction faster and more efficient, it really meets with a strong demand from banks and payment companies. And I think we have a very strong chance here, especially here in China. If you look at this Greater Bay Area, where these three different currencies and jurisdictions are working very, very hard together to grow the GBA, the Greater Bay Area, I think it makes a natural sandbox for all these regulators and governments to explore. And for example, here in Hong Kong and within the Greater Bay Area, in south of China, we have some programs which are connecting the stock exchange. A new program has been launched a few months ago to connect the wealth product. So there is a lot of existing financial initiatives which can be potentially, when the time comes, boosted by CBDCs later on. So it's a really exciting time. And as you mentioned earlier, I think we have a very interesting kind of playground here in Asia compared to some other parts of the world where CBDCs are more primary use cases.
Thanks a lot, Charles. And we are running out of time, so I'm going to ask each panelist one last question, and if you can tell you what you want each. So with all this exciting developments, right, and we're more exciting than just money, just creating money and redefining money in its new form. Can each of you share? Okay. What look like in? Oh, okay. Did you guys catch that? Okay. Just very quickly, in 1 minute. In 3. Okay. Sorry. Did you catch that?
Would it be helpful if we just said whatever we want to say for 1 minute? We're going to see these.
Go for it, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, things are going to get really interesting for sure, but I think, one of the good things is if you're trying to compete with, let's say, the Federal Reserve, if you look at money as a product, it's a well-tested and well-established economic product used by literally millions of people. But at the same time, what's really interesting about CBDCs is that they're all essentially startups. I think that's a really good analogy, right? And then in some sense, like we have disparity in terms of resources, but it's a really interesting time when literally small 3-person, 10-person organizations are building products that have feature parity with things that governments are building. So I think over the next 5 years is going to be a super interesting time. Kara's really excited to be part of that journey.
Like for me, like if you look at the hot trend, I think one of the most respectable business, like with Adyen model is allowing basically any e-commerce, any company to have the payment gateway anywhere And because right now we still have stablecoin, like still have fiat to non-fiat on-ramp license in different countries. So it still become kind of like a local game. So I believe the next step in a year or two, there will be a party that can able to aggregate all kind of license or able to link to all kind of local party where the whole fiat to non-fiat payment gateway become consolidated. And let's say on a crypto exchange, they can connect to that one party, and that party can use fiat to non-fiat for all kind of stable coin anyway. So I think that infrastructure will come within a year or two, and that will be the game changer to the whole infrastructure of the next generation finance.
And maybe for me, as a closing remark, I want to say congratulations to everyone. I think everyone in the industry have been building the technology for many years, have been building use case, tools, doing education to the developer community. When you look at DeFi, there is some pieces of infrastructure which will probably remain and will be used very widely. So everyone is I think, kind of harvesting some of the first fruits of a lot of years, a lot of hard work in the past years. And now all this work and all this technology which has been built by the community is being noticed by government, and they are starting to use the technology for money into our society. So I think it's a great first achievement. It really shows that their work is paying off, and congratulations to everyone, and stay resilient and keep working hard to keep enabling the society we are all wanting to be more efficient with the use of blockchain and blockchain technology. So it's really energizing to see the progress we've been making, all of us in the past years.
Okay, thank you guys for your impressive insights and fantastic session. Thank you guys. Hope to see you guys in person in Shanghai next year. Thank you.